Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's really great to have you with us today. You know, we spent a lot of time on this show talking about the big things. We talk about global economics, we talk about the future of AI, we talk about history. But today, I kind of want to do the exact opposite.
Right.
I want to zoom in. I want to go microscopic on something so mundane, so habitual, that you probably haven't consciously thought about it since you were about, I don't know, maybe 12 months old.
It really is the ultimate hidden in plain sight topic, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We are talking about walking, and I don't mean, the health benefits of getting your 10,000 steps in.
Right, not fitness.
Right. I mean the actual mechanics of it, the physics, the how do we get from point A to point B without falling on our faces of it.
And we're doing this through a very specific, very fascinating lens today. We are looking at it through the eyes of an animator.
Yeah.
Specifically, we are diving into what is widely considered the Bible of the industry. That's the Animator's Survival Kit by Richard Williams.
This book is legendary, and we are focusing exclusively on Chapter 8, which is simply titled Walks. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the topic walks, I just thought, okay, left foot, right foot, repeat. I mean, how complicated can this actually be?
Yeah.
But then I started reading, and honestly, my mind was blown within the first 2 pages.
It is deceptively complex, and that is the paradox of walking. Richard Williams opens the chapter by acknowledging this right away. He basically says that while walking is the most common thing humans do, it is the single most difficult thing for an animator to get right.
Wow.
It is the white whale of animation.
He quotes Ken Harris in the beginning, right? And for those listening who might not know, who exactly is Ken Harris?
Oh, Ken Harris was a titan. He was one of the master animators at Warner Bros. He was the guy who basically breathed life into Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was Chuck Jones's right-hand man. And Williams quotes him saying, "A walk is the first thing to learn. Learn walks of all kinds, because walks are about the toughest thing to do right."
That just seems so backward to me. You would think the very first thing to learn would be, I don't know, a bouncing ball or maybe a facial expression. Why is a walk the absolute toughest thing?
Because a walk is everything at once.
What do you mean?
Think about it. It's not just a single limb moving. It involves the entire body. It involves mechanics, weight, balance, counterbalance, timing, and on top of all of that, personality.
Right.
And the scariest part for an animator, the audience, you, me, everyone listening to us right now,
Yeah.
we are all experts.
We're connoisseurs of walking without even knowing it.
Exactly. We have been watching people walk every single day of our entire lives. If an animator draws a walk and the timing is off by, say, 1/24th of a second, or the weight just doesn't feel quite right,
We notice.
we might not be able to explain why it looks wrong, but our brains instantly reject it. The illusion just shatters. So learning to animate a walk is really about learning how to reconstruct reality from the ground up so it passes that subconscious test we all have.
And the way Williams reconstructs that reality starts with a definition that I absolutely love. He completely reframes the entire concept of walking. He doesn't call it moving forward, he calls it controlled falling.
Yes, that is the core concept right there. If there is one thing you take away from this entire deep dive, it should be that exact phrase, controlled falling.
Let's unpack that, because when I, walk to the kitchen to get a snack, I certainly don't feel like I'm falling.
You don't feel it because you're just so incredibly good at catching yourself.
Right.
But mechanically, that is exactly what is happening. Think about standing perfectly still. Your feet are together. Your center of gravity is right over your base of support. You are stable. You are essentially a statue. Now, to move forward, you have to break that stability.
You have to disrupt the status quo.
Right. You lean your upper body forward. You shift your center of gravity past your toes. At that exact moment, you are falling. If you did absolutely nothing else, you would face plant right into the pavement. Gravity's taking over.
And the step is the rescue mission.
Precisely. Just before disaster strikes, just before your nose hits the concrete, you swing a leg out and plant it. You catch yourself. But because you want to keep moving, you use that momentum to immediately throw yourself off balance again.
Step, catch. Step, catch.
Exactly. It is a series of controlled catastrophes.
I just love that image. It turns a boring morning stroll into a literal action movie. It's a constant battle against gravity.
It really is. And for an animator, you have to draw that jeopardy. If you just slide a drawing of a character across the background, they look like they're floating.
Like they're on ice skates or something.
Yeah, they look like a ghost or a hovercraft.
Yeah.
To make them look truly alive, you have to capture that split second of falling and then the heavy impact of the catch.
So we have this constant battle with gravity. But we don't just fall forward like a stiff plank of wood, we twist. Williams talks a lot about this concept of balance and counterbalance.
Right. This is the first major pillar of the mechanics. The human body is a master of compensation. When you throw your right leg forward to catch your fall, you are creating a massive amount of torque on one side of your body. If you didn't compensate for that, you'd literally spin around in circles.
So the body has to balance the books, basically.
Exactly. It uses opposition. As the right leg goes forward, the right arm goes back, and the left arm goes forward. It's that scissor action. We call it contrapposto in our history, but in biomechanics, it's just keeping the center of gravity stable.
I was actually trying to do the opposite while reading this chapter, walking with my right arm and right leg moving forward at the exact same time.
The tic-tac walk.
Yeah, I looked ridiculous. I felt like a toy soldier.
Yeah.
Or Frankenstein's monster.
It feels incredibly unnatural because you are actively fighting your body's natural balance mechanism. That opposition is there to smooth out the ride. It provides thrust and keeps you facing forward.
Now, speaking of the ride and speaking of gravity, there is a statistic in this chapter that Williams lists under, I think he calls it useless but interesting scientific information. But I actually think it's the key to understanding everything we're talking about.
You mean the million pounds fact?
Yes. He says that the average human puts approximately 1 million pounds of pressure on their feet every single day. 1 million pounds.
It really puts the survival in the Animator's survival kit into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our feet are absolute engineering marvels. But that statistic perfectly explains why we walk the way we do. Because we are dealing with these massive forces constantly, the human body tries to be as lazy as possible.
Energy conservation.
Ruthless energy conservation. Evolution does not want us to expend a single calorie more than is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Williams points out that when we lift our foot to take a step, we don't march. We don't lift it 6 inches off the ground unless we are literally wading through deep snow. We lifted the bare minimum.
He says less than a centimeter, right?
Less than a centimeter. Just barely enough to clear the microscopic imperfections of the floor. That is exactly why we trip over uneven sidewalk cracks that are barely an inch high. We operate on such a razor-thin margin of error just to save energy.
And he mentions that beginner animators almost always get this wrong.
Oh, constantly. Beginners almost always lift the feet way too high. They want to show the movement, they want to make it clear, so they exaggerate the lift. But then the character looks like they're marching or sneaking or cautiously stepping over puddles. To make a walk look real and natural, you have to respect that inherent laziness. You have to keep the feet incredibly close to the ground.
Okay, so we have the gravity, the controlled fall, and the extreme energy efficiency. Now we need to talk about the beat, the rhythm of it all. Williams spends a huge section of Chapter 8 on tempo, and there is a fair amount of math here involving frame rates.
This is really where the art meets the science in animation.
For the listener who might not be an animator, we should probably clarify how this works. Standard film runs at 24 frames per second. So 24 individual drawings equal 1 second of screen time.
Correct.
So Williams talks about the standard walk being on 12s. What does that mean exactly in this context?
On 12s means it takes exactly 12 frames to take one single step. So left foot moves forward and plants, that takes 12 frames. Then the right foot moves forward and plants, and that takes another 12 frames.
So that's 24 frames total for a full stride.
Exactly, which means in 1 single second of film, the character takes exactly 2 steps.
Steps. 1, 2.
It is a march tempo, 120 beats per minute. And Williams claims this is the universal standard for a normal walk. He tells this absolutely great story about Milt Kahl to back it up.
Oh, the lunch break story.
Yes. Milt Kahl was one of the Disney 9 old men, basically a god of animation. And he was completely obsessed with getting the timing of reality just right. So he bought a stopwatch and spent his lunch breaks downtown. He just sat on a public bench and watched regular people, bankers, shoppers, people rushing out to get their lunch, and he just timed their footsteps.
And what did he find? I mean, everyone must walk differently, right?
That's what you'd think. But he found that invariably almost everyone walked on exactly 12 exposures. It didn't matter if they were tall or short or fat or thin. That specific rhythm of 2 steps per second seems to be the natural frequency of the human pendulum. It is the march time.
That is just fascinating. We all basically have this internal metronome ticking away without us knowing. But obviously, if you animate every single character on 12s, the movie gets incredibly boring. You need variety.
Right. 12s is the standard business-like walk. But to show personality, you have to mess with that frame rate. Williams breaks this down kind of like a musical scale, and I think it's really helpful to visualize the speed.
Let's run through them. Let's start as fast as possible. 4 frames per step.
4 frames. That is an absolute blur. That is 6 steps every single second. That is not a walk. That is a very fast run. Think of the road runner or a cartoon character whose legs have just turned into a spinning wheel of motion.
Okay, so let's slow down a tiny bit. 6 frames.
6 frames gives you 4 steps a second. That is a frantic walk or a solid jog. It's the, oh no, I'm late for a meeting and the elevator's broken kind of walk.
Then we have 8 frames.
Now we are down to 3 steps a second. And Williams specifically calls this the cartoon walk.
Why cartoon specifically?
Because it's just slightly too fast for actual reality. Real people don't usually sustain 3 steps a second comfortably unless they're really pushing it. It has a pep to it, a bounce. It feels incredibly energetic and optimistic. It is the speed of Mickey Mouse when he's just having a fantastic day.
I can picture that perfectly. And then we hit the 12s, which we said is the normal, natural walk. 2 steps a second. Now let's go slower. 16 frames.
16 frames is about 2/3 of a second per step. This is the stroll. You are window shopping. You are walking to the park, looking at the birds on a Sunday. There's absolutely no urgency here.
Then 24 frames. A full second per step.
Now you are taking a full second to move just one leg. This is extremely slow. This is deliberate. Maybe you are tired. Maybe you are elderly. Or maybe you are creeping up on someone very, very carefully.
And finally, the slowest one he lists is 32 frames.
The show me the way to go home walk.
I love that label so much.
It is the perfect description. It's the drunk walk, or the totally exhausted end of a grueling marathon walk. The balance at this speed is so precarious that it takes forever to commit to the next step. You are actively fighting gravity with every muscle and barely winning. Just the tempo alone tells the entire story of the character before they even open their mouth.
So we have the beat. We know exactly how fast we are going. Now we have to actually build the movement itself. This brings us to section 2 of our discussion, which is the structure. Williams simplifies this massively complex action into what he calls the big 3 drawings.
Yes, the trinity of the walk: contact, passing, and down. If you deeply understand these 3 poses, you could basically animate anything walking on 2 legs.
Let's really break them down because this is the actual skeleton of the process. First up, we have the contact position.
This is your anchor. Imagine you pause a video of a person walking right at the exact moment their left heel hits the ground. That is the contact position. It is usually the moment in the stride where the legs are at their absolute widest spread. One leg is stretched way forward, making contact with the ground, and the other is stretched way back, propelling the body forward. It defines the length of the stride.
Okay, so that's the actual step. Then we have the passing position.
This is the exact halfway point between steps. The back leg has lifted up off the ground and is currently swinging past the standing leg. Now, in a normal straight-legged walk, the body is actually at its highest point here because the supporting leg is standing straight underneath the torso. You are basically propped up on one solid pillar.
So we have the stride, which is the contact, and the crossover, which is the passing. For the third one, this is the one that I think is the most counterintuitive, but Williams insists it's the absolute most important drawing: the down position.
The down position is the secret sauce of animation. It is where the weight lives. Think about the physics we talked about again. You hit the ground with your front heel at the contact position. What happens next?
You don't just hover there.
Right, you don't hover. Your full body weight, that entire 1,000,000 pounds of pressure we talked about earlier, comes crashing down onto that front leg.
So you sink.
You sink. Your knee deeply bends to absorb the shock of the impact. Your ankle flexes. Your head actually drops a few inches in space. This happens just slightly after the contact position. It completely represents the impact of gravity on the mass.
Now, Williams makes a really huge point here about rotoscoping. For those listening who don't know the term, rotoscoping is a technique where you film a real person acting out a scene, and then you trace over the video footage frame by frame to make the animation. It sounds like it should be the absolute perfect way to get realistic movement, but Williams says it looks totally wrong.
He hates it. He says it looks floaty.
But why? If it's literally traced from reality, why on earth does it look fake to our eyes?
That is the great irony of animation. Reality doesn't actually look real when you flatten it onto a 2-dimensional piece of paper. You lose the depth. You lose the subtle cues of tension. You lose the sense of physical mass. If you just trace a person walking, the drawing just looks like it's sliding smoothly over the background. To make an animated character actually feel heavy, you have to lie to the audience. You have to exaggerate.
You have to make them heavier than they really are.
You have to exaggerate that down position. You have to squash that character down much further than a real human would actually go in real life. You have to caricature the physics to convince the viewer's eye that gravity is working on this drawing. Without that deeply exaggerated down pose, the character looks like a weightless ghost.
That is such a cool insight. You literally have to distort reality to make it feel real to the human brain. Now, this concept of the down position actually leads into a major debate among animators about how to properly plan out a walk cycle. Williams outlines two distinct methods.
Right, the contact method versus the down position method.
The contact method seems the most logical to me as a layperson. You draw the contact poses first, where the feet hit the floor, then you just fill in the middle drawings later.
It is logical, it's very geographical. If you need a character to walk from a door to a chair in exactly 8 steps, the contact method is absolutely your best friend. It takes you home, as Williams likes to say. It guarantees you hit your spatial marks because you essentially map out the footprints first and build up.
But then there's Art Babbitt's approach, the down position method. And we should probably mention for context, Art Babbitt was the creator of Goofy. He was an absolute genius of eccentric, weighty, floppy movement.
Bab was a rebel in the studio. He completely argued that you should start by drawing the down positions first. He didn't really care as much about exactly where the feet landed geographically. He cared deeply about where the weight was. He visualized the character at their absolute lowest, heaviest point, the crunch of the step, basically.
It sounds like he was animating from the gut rather than using a ruler.
Exactly. By building the entire walk around the heavy points of impact, his animation had this incredible visceral quality to it. You could feel the massive Goofy hitting the floor. It wasn't just geographical movement, it was a physical event.
And Williams, being the master synthesizer that he is, suggests combining them, using the reliable structure of the contact poses to know exactly where you're going across the screen, but deeply understanding and exaggerating the weight of the down position to make it feel visceral and real.
It's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You get the perfect geography of the contact method combined with the undeniable physics of the down method.
So we have the core mechanics down. We have the controlled fall, the 12-frame beat, and the big 3 poses. But right now, if we just follow those rules perfectly, we basically have a robot. We have a stiff mannequin. Now comes the really fun part. The part that makes animation actual magic. Personality.
Yes. This is where the walk graduates from mechanics and becomes a performance.
There is this phenomenon Williams talks about called the Uncle Charlie effect, and I think everyone listening has absolutely experienced this at some point.
Oh, absolutely. You are walking down the street and maybe 2 blocks away you see someone walking away from you. You can't see their face at all. You can't hear their voice. They might even be bundled up in a heavy winter coat. But you instantly say to yourself, oh, that's Uncle Charlie.
Because everyone's walk is completely unique, like a fingerprint.
It is entirely unique. A walk is a physical accumulation of everything that person is. It's their biomechanics, sure how long their legs are, their proportions, but it's also their entire history. Do they have a bad knee from a high school football injury 30 years ago? It's their current mood. Are they happy? And crucially, it's their status.
Art Babbitt had this fantastic questionnaire he would use. He wouldn't just say to his assistants, draw a man walking. He would ask them a very specific series of questions before they even picked up a pencil. And some of them are so specific, he'd ask, is he old or young? Okay, that makes sense. But then he'd ask, what is his financial position?
I love that one so much. What is his financial position? It sounds so incredibly abstract, but think about it physically. How does a billionaire walk down the street?
I imagine chest puffed out, head held high, taking big strides.
Exactly. A billionaire who literally owns the city walks with extreme entitlement. He takes up maximum physical space. He has long, confident strides. He expects the world and the people in it to move out of his way. Now, on the flip side, picture a guy who just lost his job, is 2 months behind on rent, and is completely terrified of running into his landlord on the street.
He's going to make himself small.
Compressed, head down, shoulders hunched over, taking small, nervous steps, trying his best to be invisible. The financial position directly dictates the curvature of the character's spine.
Babbitt also asks things like, is the character strict or permissive? Are they depressed or hopeful? It's basically method acting, but for the pencil.
It's pure Stanislavski. You have to get completely inside the character's head to know exactly how their feet are going to move.
Williams tells a story about observing a walk that really perfectly illustrates this concept, the wall anecdote.
This is an absolute masterclass in observation. So Williams is sitting in his parked car one day, just waiting for someone. And there is a tall brick garden wall right nearby. He can see the very top of a person's head moving along the top edge of the wall. He can't see the body, he can't see the legs or arms, just the top of the head.
And he notices something weird about how the head is moving.
Right. He notices that the head isn't bobbing up and down at all. In a normal standard walk, your head goes up and down with every single step. We established that with the passing and down positions. But this particular head was gliding perfectly smoothly, like it was on a literal rail.
And from just that one tiny detail, he somehow deduced the entire mechanics of the person walking behind the wall.
He basically reverse engineered the entire walk cycle in his head. He reasoned to himself, okay, to keep the head that perfectly level, you physically can't be doing the normal wide stride. To eliminate the vertical bounce, you must be placing one foot directly in front of the other, exactly like a tightrope walk.
Because when you walk on a tightrope, you don't shift your weight side to side, which prevents the up and down.
Exactly. You narrow your base of support to a single line. He inferred from this that it was likely an effeminate walk, or perhaps a highly refined fashion model walk, strictly because of those specific mechanics. And when he finally drove his car around the block to check, he was totally right. The absolute lack of up and down movement on the head told him the entire physical story.
This naturally brings us to a section that deals with gender mechanics in animation. And we really should preface this by saying that these are the classic animation distinctions, essentially visual shorthand codes used by animators to signal masculine or feminine to an audience instantly and clearly.
Right. These are mechanical stereotypes used purely for immediate clarity in visual storytelling. It's a shorthand.
So mechanically speaking, how does Williams define the feminine walk in the context of this book?
It's defined heavily by that exact tightrope alignment we just mentioned. The feet land much closer to a single center line drawn on the floor. Because the feet are landing closer together, there is much less need for the body to shift its weight side to side to stay balanced, and consequently, there is far less up and down movement in the core. The head stays relatively level and smooth. The arms are usually kept much closer to the body. It's a very contained, smooth, gliding motion.
And the Mr. Macho walk?
The exact opposite in every way. The Mr. Macho walk has an incredibly wide stance. The legs are spread far apart.
Yeah.
Williams actually jokingly notes in the text that this is to accommodate his equipment.
Yeah, that made me laugh.
But if you think about the actual physics of a wide stance, it makes sense. If your feet are far apart side to side, you can't just step cleanly forward. You have to actively heave your entire upper body weight entirely over the stepping foot, just to keep from falling over sideways. So you shift your weight way out to the left, then way out to the right with every step.
It's basically a waddle, but with a lot of attitude.
Basically. It creates a massive, exaggerated up and down movement. Williams calls it an express train of motion. Lots of bounce, lots of swagger, heavy shoulder rotation to compensate for the wide steps.
And he notes something really interesting, that you can flip these switches instantly to change a character.
Yes. This is such a great animator's trick. You take a big, burly, terrifying monster character design. He looks incredibly scary.
Yeah.
But if you animate him walking with his feet crossing over that center line, giving him the tightrope walk, you instantly entirely change the read of the character. You turn the scary monster into a dainty, perhaps highly comedic performance, simply by changing where the feet land geographically on the floor.
It's just amazing how we, as an audience, are completely hardwired to read these signals. We don't watch the cartoon and consciously think, his feet are crossing the axis. We just immediately think, he looks prissy.
Exactly. It operates entirely as subconscious geometry.
Now let's talk about flavor. We established the contact, passing, and down positions as the structure. But Williams says the passing position is really the true flavor maker.
Yes. The passing position is where the attitude of the walk actually lives. In a normal vanilla walk, remember, the passing position is high. The standing leg is perfectly straight, pushing the body up. But you can change that middle drawing to change everything.
What happens if you squash the character down during that passing position? You just keep their knees permanently bent.
Then you get a classic Groucho Marx walk. You get that grouchy, prowling, predatory look. By intentionally keeping the passing position low, you completely remove the natural up and down bounce and create a very smooth, stealthy forward motion. Williams specifically calls it the sneak. If you want a character to look sneaky, you never let them go up in the passing position. They stay low and parallel to the ground.
And leaning. The angle of the torso plays a massive role here too.
Huge role. If you pitch the torso forward, the character instantly looks eager. They are leading with their head. It signals to the audience, I'm in a rush or I'm aggressive, head first into trouble.
And leaning backward.
If you lean the torso backward, suddenly they look incredibly pompous. They look like a proud mayor in a parade, or a wealthy aristocrat leading with their belly. Just shifting the angle of the torso 5 degrees in the paper changes the entire psychological profile of the walk, from predator to politician.
So we have all the basic rules down, but now, in a true deep dive fashion, we have to talk about breaking them. Section 4 is all about loosening it up. And there are some techniques here that sound completely physically painful if you try to do them in real life. First up is the double bounce.
This is that ultra-classic 1930s style, the truck and walk. Think of the very early black and white Mickey Mouse cartoons, or later, Robert Crumb's underground comic characters.
How does that actually work physically?
Okay, so in a normal walk, you have one down position per step. Down, up, down, up. In a double bounce walk, you go down, up, all within one single stride. You are literally bouncing twice for every one step you take forward.
That sounds completely exhausting.
Oh, it would be. But in animation, it communicates this boundless, irrepressible, energetic optimism. It's a pure can-do attitude. It visually implies that the character is just so entirely full of joy and energy that one normal bounce isn't enough to contain it all. It screams happiness.
Then there's a technique he describes called breaking the joints.
This is one of the ultimate secrets of fluid animation that looks totally wrong and broken if you pause it and freeze frame it. The main problem with drawing limbs, arms, and legs is that they can very easily look like rigid, lifeless sticks. To get that feeling of whip and flexibility, animators will literally break the joint backward for a frame or two.
What do you mean backward, like dislocating it?
I mean, for a split second, the knee might physically bend the wrong way. Convex instead of concave.
Like a rubber hose?
Exactly like a rubber hose. It creates a visual snap. Imagine how a whip cracks. The tip of the whip trails behind in a curve and then violently snaps straight forward. When the character's leg swings forward, the animator heavily curves it one way. The exact moment it hits the ground, it snaps perfectly straight. That sharp contrast creates massive energy. It makes the limb feel flexible, heavy, and organic, rather than like a dry bone.
Williams points to Fred Astaire as the ultimate master of this in live-action film.
Yes. He calls Astaire the human Mickey Mouse, or the double X. If you watch Fred Astaire dance very closely, he moves with such insane flexibility that he seems to literally break his own joints. He creates those impossible straight lines and sudden curves with his actual physical body. He was a living cartoon.
That is a massive compliment in the animation world. We also need to talk about the head and shoulders. We mentioned the balance earlier, but this gets into a very specific variation called the egotist's wobble.
Oh, this is a great one. So normally, as we said, the shoulders should tilt in direct opposition to the hips. It's what keeps the head relatively steady and looking forward. But some characters, and definitely real people too, have what Williams calls the egotist's wobble. They move their head wildly side to side or in big circles with every single step.
He specifically mentions politicians and actors doing this.
Right, people who fundamentally think the camera is always on them. They present their face to the audience constantly, checking all the angles. It's a highly performative walk. The head is totally independent of the body's actual mechanics because it's actively trying to sell something to the viewer.
But Ken Harris actually gives a very strict warning here in the text. He says, don't make cycles of head and body action in perfect circles or figure eights. Why is that?
Because it looks exactly like a pigeon. It looks like a bird walking in a park. Unless you are literally animating a pigeon, you want to keep the character's mass mostly moving straight up and down and forward. If the head is just swirling around in perfect math circles, it looks incredibly distracting and totally unnatural. Good advice. Don't look like a pigeon. Let's zoom in on some specific body part mechanics. Arms and hands. We know they swing back and forth, but how do we make them look natural and not just like stiff pendulums swinging on a grandfather clock?
The absolute key here is drag. This is Physics 101 for animators. When the arm swings forward, the whole arm doesn't move all at once as a solid block. The shoulder initiates the movement first, then the elbow follows the shoulder, and the hand drags behind the elbow.
So the hand is just along for the ride.
The hand is the passenger. It is the very last thing to arrive. It flocks back. Then, when the arm reaches the absolute front of the swing and starts to pull back, the shoulder pulls back first, the elbow pulls back next, but the hand actually flops forward for a split second, continuing its previous momentum before finally trailing back.
It's that overlapping action we see in real life.
Yes, it creates the total illusion of air resistance and weight. If you just move the whole arm as one rigid stick, it looks like a cheap plastic Barbie doll. You desperately need that break in the wrist to show the audience that the character is made of heavy flesh and bone. And timing plays a really fun role here, too. We talked about legs walking on 12s. Can the arms be on a completely different timing than the legs?
Yes. This is such a great trick for creating a sense of hustle. Williams suggests you can animate the legs on 12s, which is normal speed, but animate the arms on 8s, which is fast speed.
So the arms are physically pumping way faster than the legs are stepping.
Exactly. It creates this hilarious sense of frantic urgency. The character looks like they're working way harder than their actual forward progress suggests. It's the ultimate busy body walk.
What about the feet themselves? We talked a lot about the contact position, but the foot action itself has a lot of specific nuance.
The heel lead is critical. In a standard healthy walk, the heel strikes the ground first. But Williams really emphasizes the slap. The foot shouldn't just gently lower itself to the floor. It should aggressively slap down. And then this goes right back to the weight thing again. It needs to stay perfectly flat on the ground for as long as possible during the stride.
Why is the flatness so important?
It entirely anchors the character to the floor. If the heel lifts up too early in the back, the character instantly looks bouncy and totally weightless. If you keep that foot firmly planted flat until the very last possible second before the toe pushes off, you absolutely sell the heavy, solid mass of the creature. You are visually showing the sheer effort required to peel that heavy foot off the ground.
And what about lifting the toe before the step?
Lifting the toe extremely high just before the heel makes contact creates a feeling of youth and extreme vigor. Think of a proud drum major leading a marching band. They point their toes straight to the sky. The higher the toe goes, the more physical energy is being intentionally expended. A deeply tired person barely clears the ground with their toe. An energetic person leads with a very high, proud toe.
Let's talk about the hips for a minute, specifically the sway. This is a technique often used for female characters or fashion models on a runway. How exactly do you animate a sway mechanically?
The trick here is delay. In a standard walk, the hip is perfectly centered over the standing leg at the passing position. But for a sway, you intentionally delay the hip. The leg plants firmly on the ground, but the hip doesn't swing out to the side until well after the passing position. It arrives totally late to the party.
So the body's constantly playing catch up with itself.
Exactly. And when you combine that delayed hip with crossing the feet entirely over the center line, which, as we discussed, physically forces the hips to swivel naturally to maintain balance, you get that highly exaggerated, sweeping side-to-side motion heavily used by fashion models or showgirls. It's all about intentionally forcing the mechanics to work way harder than necessary to create a very specific, appealing visual line.
We are definitely getting into the really advanced stuff now. Let's talk about section 6, the fast sneak. Now this seems like a total contradiction in terms. A sneak is inherently supposed to be slow and extremely careful.
Right. But sometimes in a cartoon, think of Tom and Jerry, a character desperately needs to run away incredibly fast, but also quietly. So how do you visually animate loud speed versus quiet speed?
What's the secret sauce for that?
For the fast sneak, you use very high knees, primarily to visually show that they're actively trying to avoid scuffing the floor. You heavily lean the upper body forward to communicate the forward speed. The real secret is the belly drag.
The belly drag, that sounds funny.
You intentionally delay the midsection, the chest violently leans forward, the legs pump frantically, but the belly physically hangs back a frame or two behind everything else. It creates this fluid, escaping toothpaste kind of feel, and you twist the upper body against the legs, which is counteraction. It makes the character look like they're desperately trying to occupy as little physical space as possible while simultaneously moving as fast as physically possible.
And on the complete flip side of that emotional spectrum, we have the angry walk.
The angry walk is a controlled fall that is barely controlled. You propel the upper body forward so aggressively that the legs are frantically scrambling underneath just to catch up. The heel strike isn't a slap, it's a violent stomp. And Williams suggests a brilliant modification here. Remember we talked about the passing position usually being high up?
Yes, on a straight leg.
Right. Well, for an angry walk, you intentionally put the character down on the passing position.
Ah, kind of like the Groucho sneak walk.
Very similar mechanics, but with way more aggression. If you are entirely down on the passing position, you look like you are actively charging forward. You are powering heavily through the air rather than lightly bouncing over it. You are bulldozing your way forward through sheer rage.
And finally, before we wrap up the physical mechanics, we really have to touch on drapery, clothing, the follow-through of the fabric.
This really adds the absolute final polish of life to a walk. Everything that hangs off the character coattails, baggy pant legs, long hair, scarves moves late.
Because of inertia.
Pure inertia. When the character's leg suddenly stops at the contact position, the heavy pant cuff shouldn't just stop instantly with it. Newton's laws say an object in motion stays in motion. So the pant leg swings wildly forward for an extra frame or two, flares totally out, and then smoothly settles back down. It's that secondary motion that deeply tells the audience this character exists in a real world with real air and real physical inertia. If the clothes move perfectly in sync with the body, they look exactly like painted on skin. They look totally stiff and dead.
We have covered a truly massive amount of ground here today. From the million pounds of pressure to the breaking of the joints and the weird psychology of the financial position. It's just incredible how much deep thought goes into something that takes, half a second of screen time?
It really is staggering. As we reach the outro here, I'm struck by something Williams says at the very end of the chapter. We spend all this time painstakingly learning the formula, the contact pose, the passing pose, walking on 12s, but the actual goal isn't to just rigidly use the formula.
The ultimate goal is to break it.
Exactly. The formula is just the musical scale. You practice your scales diligently so you can eventually play free jazz. Williams passionately insists, no two characters walk the exact same way. If you are animating a drunk person, you can't just use the generic drunk walk template on 32 frames. You have to interrogate the character. You have to ask, is he a happy drunk, a fighting drunk, a sentimental crying drunk? Is the sad man truly hopeless, or is he just physically tired from a long day?
So the mechanics are ultimately just the tools to express that.
Exactly, the mechanics, the 32 frames, the low head, the dragged arms are just the specific tools used to perfectly express that completely specific psychological reality of the character.
I just love that. It brings it completely back to the art of acting. There is a really beautiful final thought from Chuck Jones, the legendary creator of The Roadrunner, involving his granddaughter that Williams includes.
Yes, this is honestly one of my favorite anecdotes in the entire book. His 3-year-old granddaughter was standing on the beach watching the ocean surf, and she asked him, "Granddad, why does the same wave keep lapping on the island?"
Why does the same wave keep lapping?
It's such an incredibly profound question for an animator to hear. Because a walk cycle literally is the same ways. It is the exact same set of drawings repeated over and over and over again. It is a closed loop.
It's a totally mechanical repetition by nature.
But the true job of the animator, the real art of it, is to completely hide the cycle. To make the audience deeply feel the life, not the mechanical repetition. To make us implicitly believe that this specific wave is brand new, and this step is the very first time the character has ever taken it in their life. That is the ultimate magic trick of animation.
That is just beautiful. The art of the walk isn't just about moving drawn legs, it's about hiding the repetition of life. So here's our final challenge to you, the listener. The very next time you are out, whether you're getting a coffee, walking the dog, or just sitting on a bench, people watching, really look at the walks.
Don't just look at the people's faces or clothes. Look closely at their mechanics.
Look for those controlled falls we talked about. Look for the Uncle Charlies. See if you can actually spot the heavy heel leads or the gliding level heads.
And ask yourself, what is that specific walk secretly telling me about that person's day? Are they briskly moving on 12s? Or are they exhausted and dragging on 32s?
I know, I'm definitely going to be watching for the egotists wobble on the political news tonight. I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us. We will see you next time.
Keep walking.